Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the New York City Housing Authority's Audit and Finance Committee meeting. Today is September 5th, 2025. The time is 10:01 a.m. We welcome everyone to this meeting. We welcome Jill Strohmeyer, Tony Lim, and Darshan Patel from our external auditor, Deloitte & Touche LLP. We will be hearing more from shortly. We also welcome Jennifer Murtha from RSM US LLP. We'll provide an update on internal audit matters as the meeting progresses. As a reminder, please place all mobile devices in silent mode. For presenters, as usual, please use your microphone while speaking by ensuring the green light is on so that all in the room, as well as those watching online, can hear you clearly. This meeting will be streamed live, and as such, it is imperative that you speak audibly so everyone can hear your contributions to the meeting. And for the record, we will now have the roll call conducted. Assistant Director of Internal Audit and Assessment, Anil Agrawal, will proceed.
Good morning, everyone. So, from the Audit and Finance Committee, we have Mr. Gonzalez,
Present.
Mr. Kaplan.
Present.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Koo.
Here.
From our audit team, to my left, we have Ben Brendo.
Present.
Myself, Anil Agrawal, present. Then to my right, we have Anika Lescott from Finance, CFO.
Anika Lescott Martinez, present.
Anika Lescott Martinez.
Present.
Amita Patel.
Present.
From Deloitte, we have Jill Strohmeyer,
Present.
Tony Lim,
Present.
Darshan Patel.
Present.
From RSM, we have Jennifer Murtha.
Present.
From from compliance team, we have Cassie Ward.
Present.
Matthew Accardi. Yeah, no problem. Okay, Aisha McHugh. From law, we have Jason Goldberg.
Here.
From finance team, we also have Judith Francis,
Present.
Pakon Ho,
Present.
Maria Perez.
Present.
From list housing, we have Sulema Crosby.
Present.
From IT, we have Roger Shields.
Present.
So I think we have all the key individuals there.
And Vic as well.
And then from audit team, we also have Avik Das.
Present.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Anil. Mr. Chairman, we have a comprehensive agenda this morning. First item on the agenda is the approval of the Audit and Finance Committee minutes of June 12th, 2025. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. That's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye. Hello. All in favor?
For the
Aye.
approval of the minutes. Thank you. That's been carried. Thank you very much. Okay. Moving on, we have the presentation, Deloitte's presentation on the 2024 single audit. I will turn it over to Jill Strohmeyer and team for that presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. This morning I'm going to take you through Deloitte's progress so far related to the December 31, 2024 single audit for NYCHA. I'm going to really talk about both the presentation and the set of financial statements together during my presentation. I think that will make the most sense today. So just as a reminder to the committee, as part of our 2024 single audit, we will issue 3 reports. One related to the independent auditor's opinion on the financial statements. Those financial statements were reviewed by you at the last meeting, June 12th, 2025, and have subsequently been issued. Those same set of financial statements will be included in the final single audit report for 2024 as well. Those financial statements are not included in your materials today because you have already reviewed them, so your materials today only include the single audit information, so the compliance information on the grants. That first opinion, which we issued back in June, will be reissued as part of this report, and it will reference government auditing standards. Same clean opinion, just adding some language around a second set of auditing standards, which we followed during the course of our procedures. The second report will be our report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance and other matters based on an audit of the financial statements performed in accordance with government auditing standards. This is what we refer to as our Yellow Book report or our internal control report. This report will have 2 findings, significant deficiencies that will be noted within this report. I will talk about those more when we get to the management letter comment, but any significant deficiencies that come out of our financial statement audit make their way into this Yellow Book report, which will be part of the single audit reporting package. But again, I'll talk about those 2 items when we get to the management letter comments. The third report that we will issue is the report on compliance for each major federal program, the report on internal controls over compliance, and the report on the schedule of expenditures of federal awards in accordance with uniform guidance. This is really your grant report. And then there is one other report that we will issue. It's your Real Estate Assessment Center, your REAC, Agreed Upon Procedures report, which is a separate report and is required by HUD. The timing of these reports, we are in the process of completing procedures. I'll talk about that here in a minute as well, with the target end date of September 30th for issuance and upload into the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. So for 2024, New York City Housing Authority had approximately $4.6 billion in federal expenditures across about a dozen programs or so. When we, Deloitte, determine which of those approximately 12 programs will test during the year, we have to determine certain thresholds. A type A threshold and a type B threshold, and then subsequently make selections of grant programs that either exceed those thresholds or have other risk factors associated with them. So this year, just gonna pull up this number, we audited 4 major programs, which covered a total of $4.5 billion of expenditures. So out of your $4.6 billion, we subjected to testing $4.5 billion of expenditures, which is approximately 97% coverage of your grant programs. The 4 programs that we selected for testing this year were the Public and Indian Housing Program, the Public Housing Capital Fund Program, the Housing Related Hazards and Lead-Based Paint Capital Fund Program, and then the Housing Voucher Cluster. At this point in time, we have not identified any material weaknesses related to the financial statement reporting I mentioned. We have no material weaknesses there. We do have 2 significant deficiencies. And then when it comes to the grant compliance, we do have 1 material weakness and a significant deficiency, which I will go over here. At this point in time, we are still not we have not completed our testing procedures. We still have some work that we need to complete related to various programs. But at this point in time, we do have one grant material weakness, one significant deficiency, and two low-level deficiencies. The material weakness relates to the lead paint matter that we have discussed for, I believe this is probably year 3 or 4, Darshan?
3.
So that is continuing again this year, so we have talked about that before, and that's recurring as your only material weakness this year. Because we have a material weakness related to that finding, our auditor's report, our grant auditor's report, that third report I mentioned, will highlight the fact that we do have a qualification over special tests related to this program and the material weakness. That third opinion, I do like to just kind of frame that. We have 4 major programs. Each major program has approximately 6 tests that we perform. So really that third report is giving you about 24 opinions, because each program and each compliance requirement is its own opinion. So approximately 24 opinions are encompassed in that, Deloitte auditor's report. One will have the qualification because of the material weakness. All the other 23 will be clean, unmodified opinions on the other compliance requirements for the other programs.
But just for my own clarification, the change in the issue about the testing that went up and we had to redo all those inspections on the findings that you're gonna give us, is that gonna be part of that finding? Or is it already inclusive in the whole audit? I'm referring to the change in how they test for, what is it,
If I may, Mr. Gonzalez, are you referring to the change in the standards for the lead-based paint testing?
yes,
Where the standard was
Yes.
lowered,
that's correct.
and then we had to retest some of the
Exactly.
units that had already
So
been
that
tested at the
expenditure
lower
is
level.
included in this.
If any of those costs were funded by grant dollars, then they're included in your SEPA, the $4.6 billion, and subjected to our testing procedures. There is no finding at this point in time specific to the change in those thresholds, at least not at this time. But it's, again, if the dollar was funded by a grant dollar, it will be on your SEPA.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so the one material weakness we just went over relates to the public and Indian housing program and your special test and environmental contaminants testing remediation. The second, well, really 3 other deficiencies. One is a significant deficiency and 2 are what we call lower level deficiencies. They all really kind of relate to the same or the finding relates to the same process, we're finding that there's documentation missing to support our testing for each of those 3 findings. Where we pick 60 case files, and we're finding that forms are missing related to eligibility, things of that nature. And so 2 of them relate to eligibility and 1 relates to special performance. The reason why one elevates to a more severe deficiency versus the other 2 being lower level deficiencies when they all relate to missing documentation is that the one finding, there's what we would call a significant amount of documentation missing specific to our testing selections. And so as a result, in our professional judgment, when we're assessing severity of the deficiency, we do look at how many testing selections did we make, how many of those selections are missing documentation, And I think in this case, Darshan, it's over 50%. So that's why we felt that it was necessary at this point in time to elevate that one finding to significant deficiency.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
On the special performance deficiency, the special performance compliance deficiency, am I to understand that the technology used by tenants electronically, they directly input into Cybele their eligibility information? Do the tenants do that themselves, or is that under supervision by PHA directors?
So, we do have a representative from the leased housing team. I think it's probably best if she answers that question.
Sorry, my first meeting. Yes, good morning. To address the question, thank you. Good morning. To address the question, yes, the applicants and tenants are directly inputting their information into the system. They use what's called the self-service portal. The files in question where it was noted where material compliance was not met are aged files. They're old, and we were not using this system. And thus, when the changeover to Siebel was happening in 2010, there was a big backfile conversion. And at the time, we weren't aware of what files wouldn't go in or would go in. So the files that are in question are aged. Some are from the 90s, some are from early 2002, 2007. And unfortunately, those documents, those were hard files and it was a different system, so they're not available.
I'm concerned about the current ones.
Yeah, the current files.
And whether or not there's in fact a check by NYCHA to determine whether the inputs being put in by tenants are in fact correct.
Yes, so we do.
Double check whether or not the income, the other, number of tenants in a particular room or whatever, are those being checked by PHAs
Yes,
to make sure that they're correct and there's no fraud involved?
yes.
Can you provide some more context to that
Sure.
process for
So-
Mr. Koo?
So when you have applicants, for instance, for example, when you have a new applicant come in the program, they complete the application, they submit all the documentation, and you go through what's termed an eligibility process. This is where we will calculate the income, determine their income eligible, they meet HUD's income limits. You look to determine citizenship, immigration, right? Things of that such for the family household to determine that they're eligible. So that process has to happen before you get to the stage to receive a voucher. And at that time, they are able to search for a unit.
So this is being supervised by the PHA director at each site?
So
Or is it done centrally?
for Section 8, I can respond.
No, not Section 8, the PHA, oh yeah, the Section 8, that's right.
Okay, yes, for Section 8, yes, we have offices, we have satellite offices in Brooklyn, the Bronx, here in Manhattan. And so the housing assistants, they are the frontliners who deal with these cases. And the cases are reviewed by assistant managers and managers.
Oh.
And we do have a QC department that does a small sample of the cases as well in terms of checking for quality insurance to ensure all standards are met.
Okay.
Don't go. So, let me be clear. So there's three ways of doing this. So the resident himself can go to the portal, do it by themselves, or they can get assistance at the location, their management office, and or go to a station somewhere either in the Bronx or Brooklyn to get the paperwork done. Because there's a mail-in as well.
Right, there's a mail-in, so If the tenant chooses or the applicant chooses to mail in documents, we will receive those documents and scan them into the system. For Section 8, there's no management office, that's for public housing. But for Section 8, they have to go to one of the satellite offices, either in the Bronx or in Brooklyn, or here in Manhattan.
So let me play devil's advocate. Ready? So let's say the applicant puts it in. Month later, there's a document missing. And they want the resident to, or the applicant to submit it again. What if that was the only copy they had and they left it with the people where it was supposedly scanned? Now what? How, do they get a grace period to be able to get that document again and then resubmit it?
Yes, so that's called the additional information request process. So we'll send them a letter, we'll reach out to them via phone for applicants. And if they explain to us that they need time to obtain the documentation, the time is allotted.
Okay. A reasonable amount of time?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
At least 30 days.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Selema, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Unless there are any further questions, I was just gonna ask you if you could please restate your name and title for the record.
Sorry, Selema Crosby, Senior Director for Quality Assurance and Performance Management under the Leased Housing Department.
Thank you again.
You're welcome.
I have one other question. With the public housing, where eligibility forms were not found or were not provided. And therefore, you're not able to determine if eligible participants meet all the eligibility criteria. Is that a high percentage or a low percentage of cases where you can't get the information and get public housing?
Is your question reference to public housing or
This
Section
is
8?
relating to the eligibility deficiency compliance for public and Indian housing. Page 173.
Is that, Anil, is that my finding or is that Section 8 or public housing?
That's public housing.
Oh, okay, sorry, that's not my
We just did section 8 a minute ago.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, any public housing reference?
So unfortunately, someone from the Public Housing Tenancy Operations Group could not be present. So I can perhaps pass it to Amita, who will try her best to respond to the question. If not, we're happy to get back to the committee.
What exactly was the question?
The question is about eligibility.
What page are you on?
On page 173. And since this is the biggest funding area for NYCHA, the question is whether or not this form information, the lack of eligibility information, there's 10, it says 10 eligibility forms were not provided. I'm not sure, that's based on the sample, I guess, of the 60. And out of the 60, 10 were not provided, I guess, right?
Alright, okay, so I can provide some context on that.
Please.
Yeah, so there are 60 case files, and 10 files were selected. So from the 60, there are different types of forms that are selected, and so in total there are 540 pieces of documentation
Yes.
under selection. And from the 540, 10 were missing in
Oh,
total.
so it's a very small percentage.
Yes, correct. Similar to last year, I believe we had around 8.
Oh, okay.
But I had the same question. Is it therefore relates only to a limited number of people? The way I read that is that you can't tell whether the eligible participants met all the criteria. These, to limit that to the 10?
We should.
Right, yeah, we can work on, I think elaborating on this, but right, so it's limited to 10 pieces of documentation out of the 540 pieces that were sampled.
And perhaps Deloitte can elaborate on the therefore we were not able to determine, because I believe that's
Thank you.
a Deloitte statement.
And I also think here, this is, we're making samples, and so there's a much bigger universe from which we're selecting from. And so we can extrapolate these numbers to kind of get a ballpark of what we think, or how many files we think could be impacted, or how many tenants we think could be impacted. But the only certain way is for someone to go through a full exercise of all of the participants in this program and look at their files. But from our testing procedures, we made 60 selections, and 10 of those files were missing some type of documentation. But again, to Amita's point, each of those 60 files has many pieces of documentation, so we're looking and checking to make certain over 540 pieces of information exist to support eligibility, and we found that 10 pieces of information were missing.
And may I ask a follow-up question? Sorry, audit committee. The 10 forms that were missing, were they for 10 individual families, or were they spread across perhaps a smaller number of families? Do you know?
Smaller.
So there are 10 forms in total, it doesn't necessarily mean that 10 of the cases were missing. I think that's probably worth clarifying as well.
Yes.
We can certainly do that.
How big would the missing forms have to be significant from your point of view? This, you're saying that 10, because it's only 10, you're able to say that the rest of them are better.
It's really a judgment call, Mark. I'm gonna say when you get into missing 25, 30, that's when it becomes a conversation that we have internally about whether or not we elevate this to something more severe. But there's some judgment and discussion that we have as auditors internally to determine the severity. In this case, this finding was there last year. I think you had a similar number of instances as well where eligibility forms were missing. And so we determined last year it was a deficiency, and so we were consistent this year because the number of samples and the number of missing documents were very similar. That was part of our thought process here too, is that it stays at a deficiency.
There's a conclusion on paragraph 4 that says the effect is that the housing authority will consider non-compliant.
Sure.
May
Sure. I mean, it's.
have you got any indication from that authority, from that development, that they consider it bad?
No, we not, but it's possible if you're missing documentation that they that's required by the grant agreement that they could reverse funding. It's possible, probably not likely, but it's possible. So it's in NYCHA's best interest to, on a go forward basis, maintain all the necessary documentation required by HUD and the grant agreement.
Do you have any idea of the amount of dollars involved in the missing forms?
Yeah, not.
So it's just the numbers that are not significant, but you don't know whether the dollar amounts could be.
I think if I can speak at least to give some context, on an annual basis, we receive around $12,000 of operating subsidy potentially for a family. I don't know, again, like how many families the 10 forms are spread across. And I also don't know how long the families have been in the program. So for example, if these eligibility forms are from 10 years ago and we didn't have it, could that potentially call into question more than 1 year of funding? I think, at least from my perspective, would need a little bit more information to be able to clarify that.
Any further questions on that? Please go ahead.
Do you suppose there's lack of information on the eligibility forms has anything to do with a high percentage of rents that are not being collected. In other words, from an income point of view, if they're not filling out the forms, if there's a high percentage of people not filling out the income eligibility forms, does that have anything to do with the lack of rent collections, the high number of delinquent rent collections throughout the system? I mean, does one procedure relate to the other outcome? In this case,
I honestly could not speak to that, and we would probably need someone from,
Can I speak to that?
sure.
The issue with the non-payment is coming more from residents that are already certified and are on our list, rental list, but are not paying their rent. So the recertification kind of reassures us of what's going on, but most of that problem comes from residents that are already in there and are not paying their rent.
but if a tenant refuses to give the information on income,
Well, then, that's a whole different
which is a
story.
missing form, then you're not gonna collect any money from that person.
No, but then that takes on a different process. Because now they have
That's
to.
what I'm asking about. What is the
Oh.
process
Okay,
for remediating or or dealing with this issue of the missing information? That's all.
I think, Mr. Ku, that is a great question, and unfortunately, again, Public Housing Tenancy Administration is not present today to respond to that. So
I
we
can
can
only
take that
tell
back.
you this.
They're missing also.
They are also missing,
Thank
yes.
Let me give you this part. Part of the process that I've seen, for at least the last 4 or 5 years with the Section 8 being implemented, is that they send you various letters in the mail asking you to submit the proper documentation. They even ask in the letter, do you need help? I think after a certain amount of time, now they're asked to come in, and then, of course, then there's the process of what happens to the subsidy if you do not turn in your paperwork.
Oh, you mean the Section 8 subsidy?
That is correct.
So in other words, you'd be taken out of the program if you don't fill out the form.
You can. I'm not saying that's
Okay.
what they do immediately. They try every effort to try and get you to submit the documentation.
Just out of curiosity, is that form, is that correspondence in different languages? English, Spanish, Chinese, etc.?
I believe in general, NYCHA makes best efforts to provide forms in different languages, and sort of mailings in different languages as well. I know that there are also processes whereby applicants and tenants can request language support services and translation services.
Thank you.
Thank you, all, and thank you, Vice Chair, for adding on that. Jill, back to
Let me
you.
migrate to another aspect of this same sort of thing. The condition, it's on page 178. 8 documents are not provided. So it's the same sort of problem, small selection.
That's correct. And we can make similar modifications to tell the reader exactly how many families are being impacted. We can do that across these comments. Yes.
Because if you read it as an outsider, you think that number should be very, very small. And 8's a lot.
These are, we gathered 540 pieces of documentation across the 60 case files and 8 documents. For this particular grant and this particular testing, 8 documents were missing out of 540.
There is this last statement, that making our best efforts to ensure that all eligibility is maintained. How small would the sample have to be when you figure the best efforts is paid off?
0? Compliance is pretty black and white.
Committee members, anything further on that? Otherwise, I'll turn it back over to Jill.
Gentlemen, anything else?
So the last thing I wanted to cover, bear with me if I can go back. Can I go backward? Thank you. We are still in the process of completing our test work for the single audit, and so on the slide here in front of you, we are still completing test work for 4 compliance requirements across 2 grant programs. So we're waiting on some additional support for our procurement testing for the Public Indian Housing Operating Program, and then for Section 8 allowable costs and special tests. There are 2 different special tests, one really related to reasonable rent and one related to rolling equity. And so I just want to let you know, because we're not completed with our test work here, there may be additional findings that come out of our work. We're just not certain at this point in time, but if anything does come out of our testing of these last 4 programs, we will of course alert this committee of what those findings are and their severity level. And then the agreed upon procedures is still in process as well.
I have a question about the schedule. There's 2 things in here that I question about. One, is FEMA one of your A or B funds that were investigated? Because it's listed here under the schedule of expenditures, including the Indian Public Housing and the Section 8, but there's also FEMA, which is, a relatively large amount. Was that examined by the auditors or not?
Not this year.
Not this year, okay,
Yes.
before.
It has been in other years.
Okay, got it.
So if, for type A programs, which are your higher dollar programs, we're required to test those every 3 years unless there are other risk factors present, prior findings, new controls in place, things of that nature.
Okay.
Type B programs, there's not a set rotation, but we generally like to also scope in type B programs every 3 years for testing as well. The FEMA program, because it was selected and tested in the last 3 years with no significant findings,
Okay.
was not selected this year.
Got it. The other question is, why is Hurricane Sandy still in here? Huh? Is there a reason why what year was Hurricane Sandy? It was 1900 or what? It seemed like a long time ago.
Because FEMA's still there, and I don't think they've paid us yet.
We are still spending down Hurricane Sandy funds and receiving
When did
reimbursement.
Hurricane Sandy occur?
2012.
What?
2012?
2012. 13 years ago.
It did take a number of years for NYCHA to actually be awarded money as well.
So it's still going.
Correct.
Hurricane Sandy repairs are still going.
Correct.
Wow.
And FEMA hasn't paid us yet.
Gee.
As long as we're talking about something like that, if you recommend that the authority ensure that all environmental contaminants are properly remediated during the audit period. We know that isn't the case.
Correct, but that's what the grant agreement is requiring, and so our recommendation is in line with the grant agreement.
No, but we know that this can't happen. Because just go down to the next paragraph, all kinds of things gotta take place or for a period of time. So that properly remediated ought to read something like in accordance with the schedule or something, because one is inconsistent with the other.
Right, our recommendation is consistent with the way the grant agreement is worded and what is required in the grant agreement. And essentially, Mark, that's why the finding is still here as a material weakness.
You know, but it says ensure that all environmental contaminants are properly remediated.
Correct. That's what the grant agreement requires,
But we know that's not the case.
and that's why we have a finding, yep.
So you're recommending something that you know can't be the case rather than recommending that they at least live with what's in the next paragraph?
My recommendation really has to align with what the grant agreement requires of the housing authority. I know management's timetable is different, and we all acknowledge that, and that's again, I don't wanna say there's a flaw in the way the grant agreement is written, but it's unfortunate that the wording in the grant agreement says that the remediation should occur under the period of audit. And we know that's not the case, and again, that's why this finding has been here for several years.
So we're looking at, if you just compare paragraph 6 and paragraph 8, they're inconsistent.
That's right, Mr. Kaplan. So as you know, in 2019, NYCHA, as well as the Southern District of New York and HUD entered into the HUD agreement, which gives us actually 20 years to get rid of all lead-based paint in our housing. And that is inconsistent with the original grant agreement, which says in the audit period, which is every year, we have to ensure that all environmental contaminants are properly remediated.
All I'm suggesting is that properly remediated during the audit period doesn't make any sense at all. Because you can't do it, and the next paragraph, paragraph 8 says you're not.
But maybe, yeah, but
Correct,
maybe.
I'm only responsible for paragraph 8, so I cannot comment on paragraph 6, which is up to Deloitte
Well, I'm
and
saying
their team,
that to have
consistent with the
one
standards.
paragraph inconsistent with another is not the way I would.
We can take that under advisement for wording of that, yes?
Or to make very explicit what the HUD agreement says, that it's over XYZ period, and that, you know, full compliance is not expected until 10 years from now, or whatever it is.
Correct.
And make that statement explicit as part of the admission that we're not doing it this year, we can't complete it. However, we're not required to complete it for at least 10 years under the HUD agreement.
Mr. Koo, I think that makes a
Can we
lot of sense, and we
make
can
an
adjust.
explicit statement to that effect? That way we know
Makes sense.
that, you know, we're off the hook.
From a management perspective, I can certainly include a very specific sentence to
Right.
what you're saying in
Right.
part
You
8.
got
Yeah.
something like that in the last
Yes,
of page 171.
Yeah, but it's not explicit.
I'm with you.
It's not explicit. It's just in general.
Listen, just for fun, if you look at the paragraph 171-2,
Yeah.
you have made lead capital L.
Oh. Right.
You see it?
Yeah, I see it.
Every place else is a lowercase.
But they put mold in capital N.
Well, I understand that.
Yes.
Just point it out.
Thank you, we will re-review that and appreciate all the recommendations on the prior point as well, thank you.
thank you.
Jill, back to you.
Okay.
Sure. Just something that I noticed on the 4 items that you mentioned at the end. And there's one thing that says, special test and provisions related to reasonable rent.
Yeah.
What exactly is reasonable rent? Because if you ask the residents now, they don't think it's reasonable rent.
Mr. Gonzalez, what page are you
I'm
referring to?
on the small little handout that was given. This one.
This is, yeah, Floyd's presentation. Number 3.
And it's item ALN number 14.871. It's the third one down.
So the reasonable rent is one of the HUD special test requirements.
I'm sorry?
The reasonable rent,
Yes.
the HUD requires auditors to test to make sure that reasonable rent is calculated for the tenants.
Have you seen those numbers?
So,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
so we selected the samples and they're pulling the documentation to show me that reasonable rent is,
So you're still looking at that?
yes.
Oh, okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure.
Now, my recollection that business of the small-time corruption at each level, at the level was part of last year's fiscal year, am I right?
Procurement.
Correct, that we looked at, the matter that made the news last February.
Yeah.
We absolutely did, we increased our procedures around small purchases and the procurement process during our audit, not only actually this year, but also last year.
Okay, now, you are satisfied that that problem has been addressed as best as possible?
Correct, we've had conversations with management, I believe there were a number of recommendations, I can't remember if it was 12 or 13, there were a number of recommendations that came out of that process. We've had conversations with management about the implementation of those new action items. We've performed our test work, based on what we tested, the conclusions reached through our test work, we were satisfied and didn't have anything else to know as far as compliance matters related to that.
How many people lost their jobs as a result?
I know what hit the newspaper, but I'm not certain how far spread that was.
I'm trying to measure the impact.
I do not have that number offhand, Mr. Kaplan, but we can certainly get back to you.
Okay.
Many of the matters are still pending in court.
Now, I'll give you this because I found some typos.
So, if
Can I ask a question about page 169? What does this mean? Auditee qualified as low risk auditee. What does that mean?
yes, we used to have the phrase high risk auditee and low risk auditee, now the standards now have low risk auditee and low risk auditee. You have to meet, meaning the housing authority or any governmental or agency or not-for-profit receiving federal funding, have to meet certain criteria for you to be considered low risk.
Right.
If you are a low risk auditee, then as your external auditor, I only need to subject 20% of the total federal expenditures to testing. If you are a non-low risk auditee, I then need to subject 40%. So it really increases the level of effort required on the auditor's part. It really doesn't make a difference in your situation because we're at 97%. So whether you're high or low, or non-low and low, we're reaching the threshold for both of those. But there's certain criteria that need to be met. It has to do with findings, and because you've had a material weakness and a qualification on the one program for several years, that takes you out of low risk auditee status.
Okay. One other question. You on page 169 say that this is not a low risk auditee.
Right.
What are the consequences of that statement?
I don't see many, Mark. I have a number of clients that have findings on programs from one year to the next. Material weaknesses, significant deficiencies. I suppose it could impact funding, I don't see that very often. Is there, Sean, anything else to add there?
No?
thank you all.
If there's nothing further on the single audit, that covers, I think tabs 3 and 4 in the booklet today related to the single audit findings, our progress. And again, just wanna reiterate, we do have more testing, and these reports should be issued at the end of September, at the conclusion of those final procedures. With that, we can.
Let me ask you a question. I've been reading in the newspapers that FEMA is in trouble in terms of its funding level. And that they're thinking, the administration is thinking about returning it to the states. Is that a risk, a high risk for NYCHA in the future? Number one, the FEMA funding. You know?
So in truth, Mr. Koo, I know probably as much as you know. We get all of our information in the newspaper as well, and we haven't had any explicit communication with the federal government or with FEMA regarding the plans. So in general, I think it is fair to say, that funding is uncertain, but at this point, all money is uncertain.
Okay. The other question is, throughout the document, you mentioned low income. What does that mean in terms of NYCHA's tenant eligibility? In some cases, you say very low income, and in other cases, you just say low income. What's the difference?
There are different levels of very low, extremely low, all based on HUD's, calculations of HUD's, area median income that depends geographically, varies by county, so those are per HUD guidelines.
So in general, I believe low income is 30% AMI, very low income. In general, low income would be if you make 30% of the average median income. And to Ben's point, it is, it depends on where you live. And very low income in general is 50% of the average median income for your household.
But what is the dollar range?
So the dollar range depends. I don't have the exact dollar range.
It depends on what they can afford to pay. So the rent is based on, when you have a subsidy, it's based on, let's say for example, the apartment costs, just to make it easy, $50. But the resident can only pay, let's say $5. The rest of the subsidy comes from that program.
But that's section.
Right, but it's basically the same for the NYCHA.
Yeah.
The other part is still 30%. So 30% of $1,000 is different than 30% from $25. So it's still 30%, but it depends on the money is involved.
For specific families, we can get back to you with the exact dollar amount
Could
and
you
what that
please?
translates to.
I just wanna know the range
Sure.
of what we're talking about in terms of income for tenants in public housing. That's all. Can somebody be in there with $100,000 income?
Well, technically, we also have what are called over-income families.
Yes.
And there are different rules around the amount of rent that they can pay.
Okay.
So it is possible,
If you could just give me a sense of.
yes.
Okay.
We can get back to you with the
Thank you
dollar
very much.
values.
Include the new program that's trying to be implemented for people that make more money in NYCHA. Oh my God, what's the name of the new program? I'll think of it.
Okay,
The price is right.
thank you all for the thoughtful
The
questions.
last question I have on this report on internal controls. Now that we've hired an expensive internal audit group, how does that fit into this internal control over compliance?
It's an excellent segue to, before we get there very shortly, but excellent question, and Jennifer, who's here with RSM, who was going to be speaking momentarily anyway, can perhaps
Okay.
briefly address that. But
I'll
before we go there, thank you again, Jill. and all from Deloitte. Mr. Chairman, having heard and received the presentation of the 2024 single audit report of NYCHA, do I have a motion to recommend to the board for approval the issuance of the authority's 2024 single audit report?
So move with the answers to whatever questions we have.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, that's carried. Okay, and now turning to our next agenda item, so before we get to the presentation I just mentioned from Jennifer of RSM, we'll turn next to Deloitte's management letter of comments for 2024. Or Julie, yes?
Yeah, I'll take it from here. Thank you. So as part of our 2024 audit of the financial statements of the Housing Authority, we this year had 3 low-level deficiencies and 2 significant deficiencies as a result of those procedures. I'm gonna start with the 2 significant deficiencies first, and then I will end the presentation with the low-level deficiencies. So, I'll just go to page 7 real quick. So the 2 significant deficiencies, both relate to capital assets. The first one really relates to year-end accrual procedures. So as part of our audit test work, we're required to make certain that any goods or services that are received by the authority that related to 2024 but were maybe paid for in 2025 or beyond were in fact captured as a liability and in the capital asset numbers at the end of 2024. So as a result of our testing procedures, and we do some things that we call the search for unrecorded liabilities, which is testing things that are, meaning invoices that were received in 2025, payments that were made in 2025, to determine whether any of those relate to those 24 goods and services. And we did uncover that there were items that were missing from the original accruals recorded by NYCHA. We had many conversations with the management team, and ultimately management did in fact book a sizable entry in the financial statements to 2024. So while they did record an entry, we did think that the amounts there, it's about $167 million. It's a large number, and so we felt that the controls around the year-end accrual process related to capital assets should be enhanced, strengthened, to prevent something like this from happening in the future. The last discussion I had with management is that they were coming up with new procedures, more enhanced procedures to their accrual process at year end, and we're going through kind of, you know, what exactly their final new control will look like for 2025 and beyond. But they are in the process of working through all of that. In the same context, capital assets, and we were looking at capital assets and what was actually recorded in capital assets during 2024, we did note that there were some GASB 49 expenses included in capital assets. GASB 49 expenses relate to pollution and environmental type of contaminants work. GASB 49 was a standard, I can't remember if it's probably 10 years old at this point at least, but when that standard was issued, it was very specific in that anything related to pollution remediation, environmental contaminant remediation needs to be expensed immediately and cannot be part of your capital assets and expensed over the life of the assets. So essentially taking that pollution remediation expense today as opposed to maybe taking it over the course of a 30-year asset. So we did note during our test work that there were certain pollution remediation type expenses that were included in capital assets that shouldn't be. Again, we worked with management. There were some sizable entries that were made to the 2024 financial statements before they were issued. And we think here again, the process of reviewing the detail of capital assets at year end can be enhanced and strengthened to make certain all of those GASB 49 expenditures are removed from year end and properly recorded as an expense. And the process makes sense. Management first recording it as a capital asset for tracking purposes internally related to a particular project. That makes sense. I understand internally why that process would be taken. But then I think it's the next step, making sure you go back for financial statement purposes and remove those specific expenses related to GASB 49. So they're not showing up on the balance sheet at year end, but rather on your income statement. Again, because they're rather sizable, spent a lot of time here, both of these items are considered significant deficiencies this year. Because they're considered significant deficiencies, these two comments will also make their way back into the single audit report. We talked about 4 findings today. We will be adding finding 5 and finding 6 when we issue this report later this month. And it will pretty much be a copy paste of these 2 significant deficiencies, and they'll be placed in the single audit report with management's response. Maybe I'll pause there for any questions on the 2 significant deficiencies related to capital assets. Is there anything I can answer?
Well, I ask an obvious question. That's a fair number of those kinds of things. What's happening internally to prevent the recurrence of such events?
Let management maybe speak to the process.
So as part of, again, as soon as unless there are any further questions, this is a good segue to, the short answer is this and other internal control related matters are part of the 3-year fiscal years 2025 through 2027 internal audit plan recently reviewed and approved by the board. Any other comments specifically? So please go ahead.
Sure.
Other
Yeah.
questions for the
We
board?
can speak,
Please.
so a little bit more on that to enhance, provide a framework of what we're working on. As Jill mentioned, we are working on enhancing the internal control, policies, procedures, identifying the key controls. And we've listed, as an overview, like 5 areas we're working on. So in terms of year-end accruals, we're expanding a review of post year-end journal entries, invoices that are recorded, and reviewing them to ensure if they're for 2024, that they're actually recorded in 2024. So we're doing a very detailed analysis review, and we're enhancing in terms of the scope of the period we're reviewing. We're also gonna be using a trend-based estimate, meaning we're gonna be looking at the accruals we have used in the past 3 years, the payments that we made for the specific vendors, and come up with an estimate. If we're missing any accruals from part 1, we can include it in part 2 from our trend analysis. And we're all, like I said before, we're working on updating the procedures as we're doing the walkthrough with the staff. Additional training for the staff as well. So that's just like an overview of, the policies and procedures we're working on currently to ensure that the accrued expenses are complete.
Mr. Hanlon, anything further on that?
Anything else? Rachel? Anything else?
Great. Thank you all, and thank you again, Jill. Please,
Okay,
go
so
ahead.
then I'll move into the final 3. There were 3 low-level deficiencies, they're on pages 3, 4, 5, and 6. The first one related to an IT matter, it had to do with database password configurations. Some of out of the 4 password profiles configured by all active accounts in Oracle, there were some that were set to default password that we noted during our test work. So really our recommendation is to review the current password profile setting and assignments for the Oracle database system and enable consistent enforcement of the authority's IT password policy going forward. The second deficiency on page 5 related to compensated absences. This was GASB 101 implementation this year. This was the new GASB as a result of the test work that we performed. Management made an approximately $11 million entry to the compensated absences balances prior to the financial statements being issued. So our recommendation here really is that management ensure that all assumptions and data that's used for future GASB 101 compensated absences calculation is accurate, reviewed, and well documented with clear accountability for any errors that it may contain. And really the error here, we cited was due to management using an age for retirement equal to the pension eligibility age, which wasn't supported by the authority's historical data. We brought that to the attention of management. They went back, they revised their age for retirement here and modified their balance before the financial statements were issued. And then the last deficiency just relates to a cash flow statement item. Essentially, we noted something that was incorrectly classified across line items within the financial statement. Management again made this correcting entry prior to the financial statements being issued. We believe that there's some enhancements and strengthening of controls around cash flow statement preparation and review that can be put into place by management going forward. So those are the 5 deficiencies that we had related to the 2024 audit.
I have a question. What is the number of people that are actually using Oracle Financial and Cybel database? I mean, and where are these systems being used? At a PHA level or central or?
So I don't have that number of the number of users, but we could certainly get back to you.
Okay, but in general, where's the Oracle system and the Cybel system used and for what purpose?
So Siebel represents basically the customer relationship management capabilities of NYCHA. So it's.
I'm sorry, would you like to, if you would, thank you, you can address it at the podium. Thank you so much, Roger. And if you could just restate for the record your name and title.
Roger Shields, I'm the CISO here at NYCHA.
From where?
From NYCHA, the CISO, Chief Information and Security Officer.
Okay.
So I don't have exact numbers on the users and that much, but Siebel is the relationship management tool, and it's used as what we call self-service for residents. They have the ability to come in, check on status. It helps refer them to other sites that they may need for maintenance tickets or stuff like that.
Okay.
So in theory, it could be the entire resident base, but obviously not everybody is using it. The backend stuff is all hosted within NYCHA data centers, so it's multi-layered architecture. So there's database components, there's application components, web server components, firewalls, and so there's a lot that goes into it. This specific finding is around the database itself that supports that. It's basically the implementation of password policy restrictions. As far back as 2022, those capabilities just weren't even enabled. So it took at least a year to be able to bring everything into compliance because of a lot of the legacy connections and integrations. So the next year, we were able to enforce that a little stronger and get rid of some of the legacy integrations. This year, there was really a user oversight or admin oversight that resulted in part of the finding, and there were changes in policy that had not been implemented yet in time on the database side.
Okay.
So it's really more, there's some corrective actions listed in that letter that tells how we're going to make everything right. But probably the biggest takeaway is the additional management controls, so more regular automated assessment of that database so that we can ensure that things are being enforced.
What is Oracle used for?
So Oracle is the database.
Oh, that's the database itself?
It's a large company that has many, many products, but in this instance, we're using the Oracle database as a backend for Siebel. Siebel also happens to be an Oracle product that they purchased, so.
Okay.
Thank you, Roger.
So I have a question. So how many systems do we currently use and how compatible are they to each other?
Kind of a loaded question is how you define system, but I think there are 24.
For example, Siebel is one system.
Yeah.
How many other of that type do you have and are they compatible to each other?
Oh, so Siebel itself is the granddaddy system of them all that does for the customer interface. I believe there's 24 or 25 other systems throughout NYCHA that integrate with Siebel and have to exchange data or provide information. Again, it depends on how you get nitpicky and define system, but do we really track those 24 or 25 integrations?
And it's easy to maneuver within the system or whatever you call it. I guess not.
Easy is
Response,
probably not
okay.
the right word, but it is supposed to be user-friendly and be helpful for the residents to get the things they need.
Okay.
I don't want to be on record to say easy.
Thank you again, Roger.
Thank you. The other question I had was on page 6 of your handout, where cash flow statement deficiency. On the second, where it says background, I didn't understand the second sentence. Reviews include agreeing all disclosed cash flow line items to appropriate support. What does that mean?
It just means that
Is that English?
we can modify the language for sure, we can certainly do that, but I'll kind of just describe the process if I can. So when someone at NYCHA, I'm gonna call it in this case, a senior staff prepares the cash flow statement, then it's reviewed by the director. During the director's review of the preparer's work, the director is making certain that the cash flow is prepared correctly by agreeing line items within the cash flow to appropriate support documentation to make certain that it was prepared correctly by the senior staff. So it's really just a.
Double check by the
It's
supervisor.
double checking, yes, exactly, that the end result agrees to the supporting.
Say that.
I'm gonna make the change, Mr. Coop.
I mean, it just
Why
sounds,
don't they make it simple?
well, it's just very complicated to understand what it meant.
Sometimes accountants are not great English
Okay,
majors.
thank you.
Let me try.
Terms of art. Jill, anything further?
I have nothing further to present today, related to the management comments, but if there's any final questions, happy to answer them.
Okay. I'm good.
We're great. Thank you again. So we've already made the motion and the motion was approved and carried for the aforementioned motion. So given that, Jill and all, thank you again very much for that presentation. Neil. And so the motion was made previously, but just reconfirming that everything just discussed in those prior two items, which were part of the, joint presentation, is still, may I ask again for another motion to
With
approve?
all the adjustments and everything else?
Everything just discussed since we,
So moved.
thank you.
Wait, they already took a vote. What is this, I'm
We
sorry?
already took a vote, right?
Okay. Thank you. Recall, just wanted to,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh-oh,
Moving on in just a moment.
so, somebody's calling me, Pat, I'm in a meeting. I'm in a meeting, yes. Okay, bye-bye. Okay, bye-bye. I'm being called from a glacier.
Thank you again, Johnny. Okay, so last but certainly not least, for our final agenda item this morning, Jennifer Murtha of RSM US LLP will provide an update on internal audit matters. Jen, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, good morning. I could address the question that was posed about the differences in the internal audit function. Deloitte does a tremendous amount of work looking to get comfort to provide an audit opinion on your financial statements. During that process, they look at lots of internal controls, and as presented to you today, they give you their results. We work in coordination with that, so as Deloitte provides you with their opinion, we come in alongside them and with compliance and the internal audit function here, Ben and Anil and the team, and take a deeper dive and look at the processes, work with the process owners to see that the internal controls are not only designed effectively, but they're actually working. So the recommendations in our reports that we'll be issuing in December will come with opportunities for improvement, as well as an assessment of fraud and a look at the controls, the design, and if they're working. So in essence, taking a deeper dive into some of the areas that were discussed today, certainly, and some of the things that we noted during the risk assessment process. So with that said, I'd like to give you an update. We've been very busy since June when Clara Ewing and Liz Watts presented to you the the fiscal 25 audit plan. We are working with leadership, management to establish a fraud risk mitigation strategy. We have several of those meetings from a governance standpoint set up for both September 15th. And then we will be doing a fraud awareness scenario leadership training on the 7th of October. So moving forward, we have begun, let's see, I'm gonna go to the next slide. We have several audits in process, 5 to be exact. We have 2 that are kicking off this month, 2 that are kicking off in October, and 1 in November. Those buckets include enterprise-wise audits, technology audits, as well as individual audits, and we'll address some of the things that came up today during the presentation by Deloitte. So December will be a very active and busy meeting. Sir?
I see the cybersecurity in the technology audits. I just have a question. I don't have access to that. I keep getting an email to go in and take some of the stuff that they're asking to do, but I don't have an account. So how do I get in to take those little classes that they are offering?
I can speak with you after the meeting.
Yeah, Roger said he could speak with you about that after the meeting.
Okay.
He's your
Thank
guy.
you very
We'll
much,
talk
Roger.
about that.
We're
Okay.
spending quite a bit of
Thanks.
time with your CISO as well.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Other questions? Any comments?
This may be out of order, but I am accustomed, when you get to internal audit, like you are, to have a very private meeting with the internal auditor without anybody but the audit committee and counsel. Is that not contemplated?
That would be his.
There are certainly some audits that we will be presenting that would qualify for closed session. We'll work with legal, your attorneys, to determine what those audits are. They're typically around technology, security, things like that.
Well, which event, I presume we'd have a much smaller group in attendance.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Jim.
So you're saying audit committee and general counsel?
What I would expect, you get the audit committee, a lawyer, and the report, and nobody else.
Well, you're all three.
Good morning, everyone. Jason Goldberg, Chief and Director of Corporate Affairs at NYCHA. Thank you. Good morning, or afternoon. Jason Goldberg, Director and Chief of Corporate Affairs at NYCHA. And if I'm understanding the back and forth, and I know it's a source of frustration for the committee, but the open meetings law, which governs NYCHA, has very limited and specific parameters as to when the committee may meet in executive session. This is, I know, I believe it's been said that the committee is free to meet individually with Deloitte on occasion, but just as a point of clarification, the open meetings law, which governs NYCHA, in contrast to, let's say, the education law, which provides express circumstances when audit committees for school districts may meet with the auditors. That has, and if we look at it, education law 2116-C, dealing with audit committees, provides express circumstances when school districts may meet with auditors. NYCHA, unfortunately, does not have the same, does not have the same latitude that school districts do. So, once again, we are constrained by the open meetings law. It states what it states. So we can take under consideration the circumstances for any possible executive session, but just given the conversation and the minutes that were approved earlier, just wanted to go on record with that.
It's fun.
So Jason, individually, they can ask that team any particular questions they want, correct?
Individual conversations are not governed by the open meetings law.
Exactly.
The open meetings law deals with when there is a quorum of the committee.
Exactly, so any committee member can converse with the audit committee or anyone regarding any concerns that they may have.
That is correct, Vice Chair.
Okay.
Yeah, but then the conversation isn't privileged.
Well, the mere presence of counsel may not necessarily make it privileged either.
Each time you raise this mystifies me, because the New York City Audit Committee operates just the way I'm talking about. We regularly go into session.
Well, I can only speak to NYCHA, how motions are made, seconded, voted upon, and what the minutes say. I will not speak to any other entity.
Well, I think to charge you with something as our lawyer, can you figure out a way in which we can see a session in which the members of the committee interact with the internal auditor?
We can look at the law again, but I don't anticipate any changes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Mr. Gannon. Jen, anything further, or committee members, anything further internal audit related? Okay, hearing nothing, committee members, that concludes our business for today. And there being no other matters to be addressed, Vice Chairman, I want to thank everyone again for their attendance at this meeting, and a motion is in order for adjournment.
Move adjourned.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's been carried. Thank you all very much. Time is now 11:25 a.m., Friday, September 5th, 2025. Our next Audit and Finance Committee meeting will be December 16th, 2025. We look forward to seeing you all then. Thank you again.
I don't want to be in that meeting. September 7th.